Hi, Judy.
Hi, Courtney. Good to see
So
you.
if all goes planned, this is going to be our first two holistic psychiatrists talking, and today will be about self-care with COVID-19, and hopefully we'll have many more. So do you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself, then we'll go into the topic?
So, I'm a holistic psychiatrist, an adult and child psychiatrist, and a psychoanalyst, and I practice in Newton, Massachusetts. Um, I have a particular interest, as does my friend Courtney, um,
Mhm.
in environmentally acquired illness like mold toxicity. And in general, um, an approach that tries to think about people in terms of their body, mind, and spirit um, when I'm thinking about trying to be helpful and looking for root causes of problems rather than symptom suppression.
Right. So that's the holistic that we are. So I'm too a psychiatrist and a child and adolescent psychiatrist. And we'd probably also be described as functional medicine physicians in that we look to the root cause. And as you said, and so today we'll talk about the holistic approach to well-being this time during COVID-19. And it's a big topic, so we're going to just more be doing an overview of things that relate to physical health, mental health, and spiritual well-being at this time. And then hopefully in a future discussion, we can dig deeper into some of those areas.
Yeah, that sounds good. And maybe if um, people who are listening have some kind of particular topic that they'd like us to cover at some point, we can
Right.
guide our
Great.
conversations in that way.
So do you what would you say, Judy? And some of this, obviously with a disclaimer, we're not providing treatment, but a lot of what we'll be talking about will be things that we would be telling people that we see and work with in terms of general well-being. So in terms of just the body and physical health, I thought we could start with talking about challenges that people are facing right now in terms of physical health, and then talk about just some tips and advice and things we think might be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in terms of staying healthy in a certain way, with the exception of social distancing that never was a consideration in the past, I would say that in my practice, when I'm working with patients, all of my efforts, for the most part, are directed towards supporting a person's immune system. And that is what is very helpful in this situation with the virus, that not everybody who's exposed to the virus gets it. And some people get it worse than other people. And I imagine that that has a great deal to do with the status of their immunity. So, in terms of self-care and recommendations, it's all of those things that we talk about all the time, which support immunity, which have to do with having like a healthful diet that's helpful for you. Uh,
Right.
and that's a very individual matter, although there are general principles. Um, and, getting sleep and movement and connecting with people and uh, sunshine. So,
Right. So all the good things that are even more important now, and even it seems like we have, many of us have more time to actually fine tune a lot of these areas right now.
absolutely. I mean, I have had so much more time since being in lockdown or relative lockdown to take long walks and to do yoga more regularly,
Right.
and to, in a certain way, generally be, I mean, on one level, less stressed than I am in my life pre-quarantine
Hmm.
when I was working so much. And
Right. And it's worth pointing out that I mean, we're both working right now through this in terms of doing video conferencing for appointments. But certainly, as with everybody, things are, there's certainly more time,
right,
less working,
less work,
less running around, less traveling.
less entertainment, like I had like plans with friends frequently to have dinner or to go to a movie, or I mean,
Hmm.
everybody is just at home.
Right. So, for me, and I think a lot of people, one of the struggles of, even just from first a physical standpoint, would be losing the schedule. So for me, if I get off of my sleep schedule, the opportunity to sleep in, that really throws me for a loop. If I don't have that built in, getting up at a certain time, letting my, internal clock know that I need that cortisol bump. And if I sleep in, I don't get that. And I'll be tired and fatigued and kind of brain foggy. And I see a lot of people that struggle with that. And I think right now with this COVID-19, more people are, probably unknowingly struggling with mood and attention because they're sleeping in and they're off their schedule.
That's really interesting. Um, yeah, I mean, one of the things that I talk about in general with my patients, like, has nothing to do with the virus, is how much the body likes a regular schedule in
Right.
terms of sleep, particularly, and also eating. Um, but like how helpful it is to go to bed at the same time and to get up at the same time. And just like you're saying, without the external pressure to maybe get up because you have someplace you have to go, it might be easier to let that slide.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The other, you brought up about food. And one of the things that that I have found that I struggle with is kind of the being at home and grazing.
Mhm.
And, that kind of throws me too. I mean, it's again, having a structure, but when I'm in and out of the kitchen and, um,
Yeah.
so, and I think for other people too, the other piece of structure is, with all that's in the news, is this tendency to check what's happening, because inevitably every hour there's another, another related news story.
That, the you're connecting the eating and the news, and like the anxiety that listening to the news can generate, then can, you know, result in like comfort eating. um,
Right. I mean, in those two areas, I
yeah.
think, sort of fall on the addiction spectrum for people, a way, and even the browsing the internet can be a way to sort of put one's mind somewhere,
Right.
as opposed to putting it into, the present and
Right, all these different ways that people have of coping with anxiety, and some of them, like a lot of our coping strategies are kind of taken away from us. Like we can't distract ourselves in the same way, like running around. We're home. And I mean, one of the things that to me seems the very most important, and this is also important pre the virus, but whatever kind of spiritual practice that you have that grounds you and contains you and comforts you and helps you feel connected at this time of social isolation is like as important as eating and sleeping and movement and all of
right.
these things. It's so important.
Right. And and two, with all this being so, everything being so uncertain, you know, it's the time to lean on that sort of inner place um oh, I don't even know how to describe it, of just sort of being in the moment,
Right.
and knowing that and really practicing living uncertainty. Like, everything's always uncertain,
Right.
but this is like a big highlighter on it.
Right. And accepting, and surrendering to what we can't control. Like
there
there's so much that's out of control now for us.
I heard a psychologist on the radio that gave a nice tip, and this would sort of fall under the realm of, you know, taking care of our mental health, but it's these areas overlap. She said to make a list of what you have control over and what you don't.
Hmm.
You know, so sort of just the act of doing that is like a letting go, you know, to be conscious of, this is what I can do, and this is what I just, like you said, have to have a level of acceptance about.
Right. I mean, it reminds me of like the Alcoholics Anonymous Serenity Prayer, which I always have thought is
Oh,
brilliant, like that I don't think I can quote it properly, but I mean, the gist of it is that you identify the things that you can change and change them if you can. And you identify the things that you can't change and you accept that, and that you have like the wisdom to know the difference between the two. And so some of the things that we were talking about, like the diet and the sleep and movement, spiritual practice, schedule, those are things that are within our control. And then, like, when we're going to be released from this situation and have a little bit more freedom is not within our control.
right, right. And, you know, we're talking around, I guess, I mean, really for what some people is anxiety. I mean, you know, through and through, some people maybe perhaps pretty severe anxiety. And, you know, I'm just thinking, so things that we've talked about, and we're all somewhere on that spectrum, but certainly like physical exercise would help with anxiety, or trying to even relieve anxiety like from the body by things like yoga, instead of the top down approach, you know, the bottom up approach to
Right.
finding calm.
I mean,
And
anxiety is, as well as, I mean, some people like are more like in the depression place. I mean, I find myself going back and forth between them.
or even anger, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. But, like, I don't know if people are aware of the emotional freedom technique, the tapping. There's a really good tapping app um, where, I mean, they've even kind of, I guess, designed it or morphed it in some kind of way to deal with the situation of things that we can't change in the world, and even the virus itself. But it's like I've been tapping every morning to, like, when I wake up and I notice that I'm feeling anxious, that I will do this tapping routine of, there's certain points that you tap on there, like acupuncture,
right.
pressure points, and it's helpful. It's really helpful, and it's something you can do like before you get out of bed.
And so you're tapping on the area, and you're sort of saying out loud,
Right. First, you accept, you
recognizing your feeling.
recognize what the situation is, that this is a situation that is not in my control and it's creating a lot of anxiety. But then you affirm that even though it is the way it is, that you still love and accept yourself.
Right.
I mean, that's essentially at the heart of it. But
And my understanding, and it's really interesting, is that those acupuncture points actually relate to the vagus nerve, so that as and I don't know that Nick Ortner necessarily talks about that, he might, but apparently there's a relationship there, so that
that would be a great conversation about the vagus nerve.
yes. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
um
But attending to the vagus nerve is so important for getting out of the fight and flight
right.
stress mode.
And so that's a good example, though, of like relieving anxiety or even symptoms of depression or even anger from the body up.
Yeah, right.
Because you need your body when you're doing the tapping,
right,
to help access that calm.
Right.
So it's
the
a
body
great,
is kind of doing it. It's not like you doing it.
right. And then your body's calming those automatic thoughts down as you walk through these different statements, I guess.
Yeah.
So you did mention, so it's the tapping solution, and it's Nick Ortner has books and an app.
An app, yeah, and there's a
really
free
nice
version of it. And actually, he has an offer for healthcare providers to have the premium version of it for 6 months for free, given the situation of the virus. And it's nice because you can teach to people.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things that on the surface seems kind of odd, to just so people know that but when you start doing it, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing. So so we've talked about sleep some and diet. I'm just kind of running through we've talked about some of these things more superficially, and we'll get in deeper in future talks. But what about just, I thought maybe we could both comment on what we see as priorities from a nutrient standpoint. Granted, there's lots of really long, extensive lists that functional medicine doctors and holistic practitioners are recommending, but I think it's worth just sort of prioritizing a few things that would, be generally healthy for most people without our giving treatment.
Right. I would say high dose vitamin C.
Right. That's on mine too.
Mm-hmm. I'm taking myself about 3,000 milligrams a day.
Mm-hmm. I'm similarly 2,000 to 3,000.
Yeah.
I kind of go back and forth.
And
then vitamin D is high on mine. And
yeah, that's always really high on mine. And I take 10,000 a day of vitamin D. And zinc.
And I'm, as you know from some of our discussion groups, I'm high on, not high, I'm high on, I really like quercetin, and hoping it's the research that they're doing on it with COVID-19 is going to make it into our country, and that's so reliant on pharmaceuticals.
Right. Quercetin is just in general an all-around great supplement. It's inexpensive. It's generally well tolerated, right? I mean,
right. And there are a few medication interactions, so it's not completely benign, but nothing is.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm going to look down my list here. We talked about sleep, and I think it's worth talking about exercise right now. I know you're walking, which is great, and I see a lot of people, myself, have problems with allergies, especially this time of year, and it's hard to get outside to get some of that exercise.
Yeah.
So I'd put in a plug for like online exercise videos, and I'm not into the whole boot camp approach, but some people like that. So I'm trying to do some like more dance and kind of lighthearted ways of getting exercise without it becoming too regimented.
Yeah, the yoga studio that I go to regularly pre-virus is streaming their classes with the same teachers. So that's been really nice.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you still have the community support.
And some
do you see the other participants, or?
Can if they don't they can choose whether or not to have just.
Oh, sure.
Or,
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely not the same, and in a way like a kind of pale substitute, but I'm grateful for it anyhow. I mean,
Right.
I feel that way about so many things, like so grateful for the technology that allows us to connect and to continue to work and to talk with friends and family. But it is a deprivation to not be able to be in person with people.
Right. Well, let's add that to our is gratitude,
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes.
because that's such an all around for physical, in terms of well-being, and it's been studied through and
Absolutely.
through.
Yeah.
And I know with a lot of loss right now, the more that we can focus on even just I try to tell the people that I see to, do gratitude lists.
Yeah.
As simplistic as it sounds, of how powerful it is in terms of even neuroplasticity and rewiring. So we start to scan our day for the positives. And I think like right now it's especially important, and and especially for people that are really struggling more than we have, or many people. There's a whole range of what people are going through, even in terms of frontline health workers, their experience right now. They would like to, I'm sure, be thinking about all these things that we're talking about, and probably in survival mode.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But even there, taking 5 minutes to do an inventory of specific things in the day that one's grateful for.
Right. And even like you can do it like at a, kind of concentrated time like that, or you can do a practice of when you notice something that brings you pleasure to take like 3 deep breaths.
Oh, that's nice.
Savor it, because like our minds are like Teflon for good stuff and very adhesive for stuff that's stressful and um, negative. So to really savor and dwell on what brings us pleasure and that we feel
Right,
grateful
to
for.
stop.
Yeah.
I like that idea of taking the breaths, though. It
Yeah.
really, it kind of embodies it. Then again, it makes it more solidified than just a fleeting passing awareness.
Yeah. There's an author, Annie Lamott,
Oh, sure.
has a lot of books that have like a spiritual perspective. I mean, all of her books do really, and she has a book about writing, but one of her books that I like, and I'm never quite sure of the order, I think it's help. It's like 3 essential prayers: help, wow, thanks. And
Oh, right.
so
I
help
remember reading them.
obviously is like asking for assistance, which we all need at this time. And wow is just like, I mean, there are still so many things to feel so appreciative of in our daily lives. And thanks again is like that kind of appreciation. Wow is more like being open to a major surprise.
I would cut on, when I do a little gratitude list, I'll sort of think about what I call divine sightings. So that would kind of fall under the wow,
Yeah.
like things that, and it might be things that are unusual, or, some synchronicity or something beautiful. And I think right now with the, like one recently was seeing this image of these firefighters in New York, clapping and honking their horns as the medical staff was switching shifts in the hospital, to show their appreciation. And as painful as things are right now, there's a lot of beauty in terms of compassion and humanity. And so I think to
not that
even keep our eyes open for that is is good for the soul and spirit.
Absolutely. So important.
So I'm going to look back again and see. We talked about sleep, some exercise, immune support, routine. I think purposefulness is a big one too, is how we can stay purposeful, and this time kind of calls for imagining ways to be purposeful in ways we hadn't been planning, or and I'm still kind of grappling with that in terms of, I mean, maybe even this project you and I are doing is, how can we be useful in different ways at this time?
Right. And yeah, it's nice to try to get creative about what you can do to serve or to feel useful or to make things feel meaningful.
Right. And fitting with, I guess, how getting creative about ways to connect.
Yeah. Connecting is like so important now.
And for some people, this teleconferencing is, in some ways, I think they're connecting, in some ways more.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They're reaching out to family members and setting up times for people to connect when it may not have, it may have been taken in for granted before.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we took for granted that it's really amazing now to recognize that, wow, never thought before that it was like so amazing to be able to go to the yoga studio, that
right.
privilege, or to have patients come to my office, or
Before we sign off, mention your blog and website, and then
so I write a blog that can be found on my website. The title of it is Adventures in Holistic Psychiatry. And I write about the kinds of things that we've been talking about, and really anything that is on my mind and is of interest. And so my website is my name, judytsafrirmd.com, and the blog can be found there. And I invite everyone to subscribe to it, because I love to have people read and to comment and to have that kind of interaction.
Great. Well, hopefully this will be on there. We'll see. And mine similarly is my name, CourtneySnyderMD.com, where I periodically put up blog posts and share information there. And wherever we share this, be it on our websites or on Facebook, if people want to leave comments and questions or things that they'd like us to talk about, then we'll think about a discussion in a week and potentially weekly, and we'll go from there.
Right, and maybe we can have links like to the Tapping Solution app, or to the
that'd be great.
Or you mentioned some things I can't remember now, but whatever we were talking about, we could have links to them.
That'd be great.
Okay.
So no one I'd rather do this with.
Same here. I feel so blessed.
And as we said when we turned the recording off, I think it's worth sharing with people that, like, our approach to a new project that could be anxiety provoking is to just offer it up as if it, with the hope it can be helpful to people.
Yeah. And
because I think everyone can benefit from that kind of mindset of, if this is useful, it will go forward, and if it's not, it won't, and we can just trust that.
Right. And both Courtney and I can be perfectionistic, and that can be very inhibiting in terms of trying new things and putting yourself out there. the yoga class that I did yesterday, or was it the day before? All the days melt into one another. The teacher ended with a quote that was, forget who it was by, but she said something like, if only the birds who could sing the most beautifully in the forest sang, the forest would be very quiet. So it was sort of an encouragement to offer what you can offer, and that that is enough. And that's the approach that I want to take with this project, is to just trust that it's in divine hands and it will unfold as it should.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And that's a perfect way to end.
All right. Good.
And we'll try to bring that spirit to each of these.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Great, Judy.
Courtney.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.